Greetings, Guardians, my name is Bife here. So Lightfall is fast approaching, and the small bits and pieces that were being shown aren't saying much, but I think it's fair to say that we're all looking at a fairly apocalyptic moment. You know, it just doesn't have the right vibe. We're about a week or two away from getting our end of season quest, and it's going to involve the Warmind Rasputin, as we're all aware. The last time we interacted with him, he hadn't come up with a solution to Xivu Arath's trap. This has led us to a rather ominous question: is there even a way for Rasputin to be victorious against the Hive God of War? Perhaps more seriously, the question has arisen of whether Rasputin can survive or not. The old lore from Beyond Light, and the Dark Future lorebook in particular, has only compounded these concerns further, and so today I wanted to touch on the topic, give my 2 cents, and give everyone an idea of how likely it is that Rasputin is going to kick the bucket. Also, today is the first day of having my microphone back and actually in working order, so that's nice. The computer setup is here, so expect more regular content going forward. We'll be getting back on the grind of things. I know usually I save updates till the end, but here it is, and I thought it was important to let you all know. Anyway, before we go any further, let's recap the situation for the Season of the Seraph and what it's led to with this particular moment. The whole season we've been moving towards the objective of helping Rasputin to reclaim the Warsat network. The Warsats are a complicated thing to explain, but the simplest way of doing so is to say that they're part of an orbital satellite array capable of gathering data from around the system, and they're also part weapons system that Rasputin can fire at targets. I say fire, but it's more accurate to say he deorbits them. You know, this is more of a rods from God kind of situation. Big object coming at you from orbit makes big impact on the ground, and I mean, I'm pretty sure most of us have been hit by one of these things if we've played Destiny. At least once or twice we've died from them. So, you get the situation, they cause a lot of damage. The point to be made here is that there's a lot of these things floating around the system, and if the Hive gain access to the whole network and activate them all against the last city, they could use them to destroy the entire thing. This also is supplementary to new revelations that the Warsats could potentially contain weapons that Clovis Bray might have used in another time to shoot down the Traveler. It's unknown if these weapons would be effective against the Traveler, but what does seem clear is that Rasputin considered them a serious enough threat to reach out to us weeks back and counter Clovis's plans. All this is to say that the Warsats are WMDs with some pretty significant power, and we should take them seriously. We also discovered this season that the plan of Xivu Arath involved the use of the Warsats as well, and that no matter which side used them, Xivu's plan would be enacted. If Xivu used them, the city would be destroyed. If we used them, Xivu would allow the use of such a powerful war technique to summon her army above the moon, and she would begin the invasion of Earth and accomplish practically the same purpose. The end result of the plan would be to attain control of the Warsats and refrain from using them as a result. With this in mind, Rasputin would not fire the Warsats, but instead has been spending weeks recently trying to calculate a solution to Xivu's trap and our current problem, but at the time of writing, no such solution has been found. So, at this point in time, there are quite a few different things in jeopardy. We know that Xivu is planning to attack at some point, we know we need to continue to wrest control of the Warsat network from her, and more importantly, Rasputin effectively acts as kind of a loaded gun. It's one of those moments at which, you know, it's dangerous to have Rasputin around and the Warsat network in his control, even if he has no intent of using it to ensure that he's able to adequately defend us. That is the problem that Mara Sov raised for us in the seasonal cutscene. Either way, it all raises our first question: will Rasputin survive the coming storm? It's a bit of a non-answer to say that it's too soon to tell, but I think it'd definitely be worth explaining why there's a good reason to suspect that Rasputin wouldn't make it. Chief amongst all the evidence that we can gather is the records of a different timeline that the Exo Stranger has experienced, which is found in the Dark Future lorebook. In this lorebook, the last city falls to Eramis, Savathun, and the Witness, and Rasputin is one amongst a number of heroes that, after this moment, joined together to face the forces of darkness. In the end, however, they were betrayed from within by none other than Anna Bray, who embraced the darkness and stasis in particular in a critical moment of the story. The efforts of the heroes failed, and it's presumed that Rasputin died thanks to the betrayal of Anna Bray. This assumption is also made because of Rasputin's close ties to Anna, and the idea that her betrayal would have easily led to his downfall in tandem. The Dark Future lorebook is really commonly cited whenever anyone considers the fact that we're in big trouble, and whenever someone does cite it, I'm quick to remind them of a few things. Firstly, Elsie Bray at the end of Beyond Light's story has told us personally that it's a markedly different timeline that we exist in from the previous ones that she's relived. In other words, we are not living in the Dark Future timeline. That is not a perfect guide. Secondly, it's worth pointing out that we already know this because there are some pretty extraordinary differences between that timeline and our current one. For starters, Eris Morn, who in the Dark Future is actually the main evildoer, she is the antagonist of the entire story, she's not turned to the side of the Witness, and Savathun has left the side of the Witness and even gone as far as claiming the light. Two major plot points within this rotate upon that fact, and frankly, they're so different from the Dark Future that they're almost unrecognizable. The Last City by this point would already have fallen as well, and Ikora Rey would have been killed by the Witch Queen, and Zavala would have been brutally maimed by her. The Drifter would have also perished, alongside a host of other heroes and, well, questionable characters in the Drifter's case that used to frequent the tower. There are such stark differences between this timeline and our own that it really is worth reminding everyone that this is an incredibly different series of events that is quite simply not guaranteed to play out. There are some constants though, constants that cause a lot of concern, and perhaps rightly so. Guardians have not only learned the power of stasis, but have also been corrupted by stasis on a few notable instances. The Witness's assault on Earth seems all but imminent, and it still holds the allegiances of both Eramis and the Hive, albeit the Hive are commanded by Sivu Arath and not Savathun. And last but not least, there is still the question of Anna Bray, who has been shaken in her conviction when moments of doubt offer uncomfortable questions. Moments where Rasputin has been able to reassure her, but moments nonetheless. It's not at all impossible that we should see a moment, yet again, where Anna betrays us as weakness creeps in, and someone particularly persuasive is able to ply her. We know that it's happened in a different timeline, we just have to hope that the conviction of Anna is stronger this time, and that her friends and family are able to appropriately prop her up, something that was missing in the other timeline. But in spite of all these differences and similarities, it's still pretty difficult to see whether or not Rasputin will survive based on the Dark Future lorebook alone. I mean, it goes badly there, but who's to say it won't go badly now, here, in our timeline? Okay, I grant you it's a lot harder to say that knowing that the expansion we're about to get in a month is called Lightfall, but, you know, hear me out. I think if we're going to ask the question about whether Rasputin will survive or not, I think we should look at it from a logistical and tactical standpoint, as much as one that refers to the old lore. And I think oddly enough, the major question about Rasputin's survival breaks down into three individual questions. First of all, what is going to happen to the helm in Lightfall? Secondly, how much of Rasputin's systems can be placed purely within the exoframe and its accompanied onboard systems within the helm? And thirdly, if lots of his systems need to be found in the warsats and their attached hardware, how easily can they be moved? The first question is less about the helm and more about where Rasputin's frame is located. If the frame is destroyed, then Rasputin is once again confined to any systems that hold fragments of his data. Suffice to say, if the helm falls, then it seems much more likely that the rest of Rasputin's systems will fall too, and he will probably die thereafter. The second question is a sort of addendum to the first one. If all of Rasputin is contained within the helm, then we can perhaps leave the system, or at least leave Earth, and the Warmind will still be intact. This dramatically increases Rasputin's chances of survival. Finally, that third question. If we can't contain all of the Warmind's data within the helm and the exoframe, then we need to see how easily that hardware could be moved. If it contains Rasputin's data, it needs to be saved. Not all of it, perhaps, but most of it for it to be considered all of him. Even in this moment where he's been moved into the exoframe and the submind data has been used to reactivate him, Rasputin admits that he's not the same as he used to be. But regardless, saving bits and pieces of his data, no matter where they are, is important to this question. And so, it makes you wonder, is there Rasputin data contained on Seraph Station? What about the Warsats floating throughout the system? How easily can all of these things be moved and taken with us if we have to leave Earth? It's hard to imagine that something like Seraph Station is mobile, but that's not impossible given that it is an orbital station, and with the right technology, which is not out of the scope of the Golden Age, it could be deorbited and given free rein of flight in space, at which point all you'd need is the appropriate amount of RCS and thrusters in different locations and you could move the thing around. Again though, that's a much trickier question than could you move Warsats, which I imagine you most certainly could. I think it's much more likely that Rasputin will survive if he's able to keep his assets mobile. Have you ever heard of a military doctrine from the US Air Force known as Agile Combat Employment? Yeah, I'm assuming that's a no, but just in case you haven't, essentially it's a operational scheme that allows you to maneuver a bunch. The idea is that if you have all your assets stacked up in one place, then, you're not necessarily going to be able to maneuver them out of the way immediately if danger strikes there. This is one of those immediate moments where you can sit and realize that keeping Rasputin's assets mobile allows you to not only more effectively strike with them if you could use the Warsats and you find an opening in the enemy's armor, but also, more importantly, it means you can keep them out of danger. Agile Combat Employment revolves around this theory that if you keep your assets mobile, it's a lot harder to locate them and therefore it's a lot harder for them to be destroyed. You can also more effectively punch holes in opportunistic lines and maintain your combat presence. So a mobile Seraph Station, mobile Warsats, and a mobile Helm are key to Rasputin's survival. It's also worth noting that all these questions assume that if sufficient Warmind data is collected from any source, then the Warmind can be considered to be alive. But it's also possible that just a small amount of data could compile into something that by our definitions would be alive. The real question is, would that still be a Warmind? And that matters because, well, the data that we've gathered over this season has dramatically changed Rasputin. By the measuring stick of, is the old Rasputin alive, the answer is still actually no. By the measuring stick of, is this new Rasputin alive, then technically yes, thanks to the old data. But any one piece of that data doesn't necessarily make up Rasputin. It's a bit like the ship of Theseus, If you replace all the old parts, is it still the same ship? In the end, it's kind of hard to tell. I think Rasputin would say yes in his current state, but might protest and say no if the metaphorical ship was reduced to a few planks and a sail. The point is, we don't know what life technically looks like for Rasputin, and we don't know how much of him could be destroyed for him to technically be called alive. But what do I think personally of this? I think that Rasputin's place bound in the helm means that unless the exoframe gets legs and is physically placed in danger, it's much more likely that the Warmind will survive at least beyond Lightfall. But if we're going to look into Rasputin's future beyond Lightfall, things become a whole lot murkier. I would fear not the threat of Xivu Arath, but the threat of the Witness and the Black Fleet. Previously, in the Season of Arrivals, it took but a wave of the Witness's hand for the Black Fleet to snuff out the Warmind in a second. Who's to say that couldn't happen again? For all we know, Lightfall will ultimately just be us getting crushed. And if we Guardians are in trouble, I imagine the Warmind and the civilians inside the Last City will certainly fare even worse. But that's all from me for now. If you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and leave a like, and also remember to leave your thoughts down below in the comments section. You can of course also hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications. We are getting to a really exciting moment. We are less than 3,000 subscribers away from 1 million. I'm really excited for the end of that journey and the start of a new one. But regardless of where that journey takes us, we're going to go into Lightfall and come out swinging with some great content. I'm really excited for the future. There are things I'm planning for the next year or so, which I'm sure some of you will already have seen me talking about on Twitter. if you are excited for them, then please, go ahead and keep following, because it's going to be a big year. Regardless, know that as per usual, your viewership is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Rhodacia ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.